She sat as fate. I thought she had everything figured out. She thought that once the ink was dry, she'd be sitting on a fortune and I'd be gone, erased from the family like I never existed. My stepmother, Diane, had spent 12 years waiting for my father to die, and the moment he did, she smiled at me across the hospital room and said, "You should probably start looking for somewhere to live, Mia. This isn't your home anymore." She thought she had won. But Diane didn't know what my father had done 6 weeks before he died. She didn't know about the letter he left with his lawyer. She didn't know that in exactly 72 hours, she would be standing in a courtroom, shaking, begging me not to take everything. But before I tell you how it all unraveled, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Mia Gallagher. I'm 28 years old, and I grew up in a small town called Ridgefield, about 40 minutes outside of Nashville, Tennessee. To understand what happened at my father's deathbed, you have to understand the woman who destroyed my family. My mother, Claire, was a music teacher. She taught piano lessons out of our living room every afternoon. I would sit on the stairs and listen to the scales drifting up through the floorboards. My father, Patrick Gallagher, owned a chain of auto repair shops across Middle Tennessee. He started with one garage and a lift he bought at an auction. By the time I was born, he had 14 locations and over 200 employees. He wasn't flashy. He drove a 10-year-old truck. He wore the same brown boots every day until the soles wore smooth, but he was kind. He was the kind of man who remembered every mechanic's kid's name. He'd show up at their Little League games on Saturdays. He brought donuts to every shop on Fridays. When I was 12, my mother got sick. Pancreatic cancer. It moved fast. She went from playing Chopin in the living room to lying in a hospital bed in the span of 4 months. My father was wrecked. He stopped going to work. He sat by her bed every single day. He held her hand and talked to her even when she couldn't talk back. I remember the last thing she said to me. She was so thin her wedding ring kept sliding off her finger. She pressed it into my palm and whispered, "Take care of your daddy, Mia. He's going to need you." She died on a Wednesday morning. The rain was coming down in sheets. My father didn't cry at the funeral. He just stood there holding my hand, squeezing it so tight I thought the bones would crack. But he didn't let go. Not once. For 2 years after that, it was just us. We were a team. I cooked dinner while he balanced the books at the kitchen table. We watched old westerns on Friday nights. We didn't talk about Mom much because the wound was still too raw, but her piano sat in the living room and neither of us ever moved it. We didn't need to talk about her. She was there in every corner of the house. Then Diane showed up. She was a receptionist at one of his shops. Blonde hair, bright smile. 10 years younger than my father. She started bringing him lunch. Then she started staying for dinner. Then she started staying the night. I was 14. I didn't trust her. I couldn't explain it, but something about her felt rehearsed. The way she laughed at his jokes a beat too late. The way she looked around our house, like she was appraising it. "She's nice, Dad," I said one night. We were doing dishes. "But she feels, I don't know, like she's trying too hard." My father dried a plate slowly. "She makes me feel less alone, Mia. That's enough for now." They got married 6 months later. It was a small ceremony at the courthouse. I wore my mother's ring on a chain around my neck. Diane saw it and frowned. "That's a bit morbid, don't you think?" she said. "Wearing a dead woman's ring to a wedding." I didn't answer. I just tucked it inside my shirt where she couldn't see it. The first year wasn't terrible. Diane was on her best behavior. She redecorated the living room. New couch, new curtains, new rug. She moved my mother's piano into the garage. "It takes up too much space," she said when I came home from school and saw the empty spot by the window. "And nobody plays it." "I play it," I said. "You're not very good," she said, not looking up from her magazine. My father was working long hours. He was opening 3 new shops. He didn't notice the small ways Diane was erasing my mother from the house. The photos of Mom came down from the hallway, replaced by photos of Diane and my father at some resort. Mom's cookbooks disappeared from the kitchen shelf. Her garden in the backyard, the one with the lavender and the tomatoes, Diane had it ripped out and replaced with a stone patio. When I told my father, he sighed. "She's trying to make the house feel like hers, Mia. You have to understand. She doesn't want to live in a shrine." "It's not a shrine," I said, my voice cracking. It's our home, Mom's home. He pulled me into a hug. I know, sweetheart, I know, but he didn't put the photos back. He didn't save the garden. He was too tired, too lonely, too afraid of losing another woman to fight about curtains and tomatoes. By the time I was 17, Diane had a son. My half-brother, Cole. He was a sweet baby, actually. Chubby cheeks, big brown eyes like my father's. I loved him immediately, but Diane used Cole like a weapon. Everything became about Cole's needs. Cole needs a bigger nursery, so my bedroom was halved to expand his room. Cole needs quiet, so I couldn't practice piano anymore. Not that the piano was even inside the house. Cole needs his mother's attention, so Diane couldn't possibly help with the business. My father started leaning on me. At 17, I was going to the shops after school helping with inventory, answering phones. I didn't mind. I liked the grease-stained guys who called me Little Gallagher. I liked learning how the business worked. I understood the numbers. I saw the patterns in the revenue. When I graduated high school, my father sat me down at the kitchen table. Diane was out spending money somewhere. Cole was asleep. I want you to go to college, he said. Get a business degree. Come back and run this thing with me. What about Diane? I asked. He looked at me for a long time. His eyes were tired. Diane doesn't care about the shops, Mia. She cares about what the shops produce. There's a difference. That was the closest he ever came to admitting the truth about her. I went to Middle Tennessee State, business management. I drove home every weekend. Diane hated it. She wanted me gone, out of the picture, out of the will, out of my father's mind. She started working on him while I was away. I could feel it every time I came home. The temperature in the house dropping a few degrees. The way my father avoided eye contact when Diane was in the room. Your father and I think it might be better if you stayed on campus during weekends, Diane said one Sunday, stirring her coffee with a manicured nail. You distract him from his family. I am his family, I said. You're his past, she said quietly and smiled. That sentence haunted me. You're his past. As if I was something to be filed away, like my mother's photos in the box in the garage. I graduated in 3.5 years. Top of my class. I drove straight to the main shop. Still in my cap and gown. My father was under a truck, changing an oil filter himself even though he was the owner. That was Patrick Gallagher. He slid out from under the truck, saw me standing there, and his face broke into the biggest smile I'd ever seen. He hugged me so tight he got grease on my gown. I'm so proud of you, kid, he whispered. I started working at the company full-time. I was good at it. I streamlined the supply chain. I renegotiated the parts contracts. I implemented a customer loyalty program that increased repeat business by 30% in the first year. The mechanics loved me because I listened to them. I knew that Jimmy in Shop 7 needed a new alignment rack. I knew that the team in Shop 12 was short-staffed on Tuesdays. I was my father's daughter. Diane watched all of this with narrowing eyes. She saw me getting closer to the business. She saw my father trusting me with more responsibility, and she started to panic. Patrick? I heard her say one night through the bedroom door. I was walking past to check on Cole, who was 5 by then. You need to think about Cole's future. About our future. Mia has her own life. She shouldn't be so involved in the business. It's not appropriate. She's my daughter, my father said. And she's damn good at her job. She's undermining me, Diane hissed. The employees respect her more than they respect me. That's because she shows up, Diane. She works. You want respect her more than they respect me? That's because she shows up, Diane. She works. You want respect? Earn it. I heard something shatter, a glass maybe. Then silence. Then crying. Diane's specialty. She could turn on the tears like a faucet. It always worked on my father. He was too kind. He confused manipulation with vulnerability. The next day, he was quieter around me. He didn't assign me the new expansion project. He gave it to a consultant instead. Diane's fingerprints were all over it. Then, 2 years into my working there, my father was diagnosed with ALS, the cruelest diagnosis imaginable. A slow erosion of the body while the mind stays sharp. He would lose his legs, then his arms, then his voice, then his breath. The doctor said he had 2 to 4 years. I was 25. I moved back into the house immediately. I converted the downstairs study into a bedroom for him. I researched every treatment, every clinical trial, every specialist. I was at his side every day before and after work. Diane's reaction was instructive. She didn't cry. She didn't ask the doctor questions. She sat in the chair in the corner of the hospital room tapping on her phone. Later, I saw what she was texting her sister. Doctor says 2-4 years. Need to talk to the lawyer about the estate. I wasn't supposed to see that. But I did, and everything changed in my head. She wasn't a wife anymore. She was a vulture circling. Over the next year, my father's condition deteriorated. He went from a cane to a wheelchair to a hospital bed, but his mind was sharp. He saw everything. He saw Diane hiring a decorator to redo the master bedroom, the one he could no longer climb stairs to reach. He saw her buying a new car, a white Mercedes, charged to the company account. He saw her taking Cole on vacations while he lay in his hospital bed watching the ceiling fan spin. She's spending like I'm already dead, he told me one night. His voice was getting weaker. It took him longer to form the words now. I checked the accounts, Mia. She's moved $200,000 into a separate account in her name. Can you stop her? I asked. Not without a fight. And I don't have the energy to fight her and this disease at the same time. He paused. His breathing was labored. But I have a plan. What kind of plan? Quote Arthur Whitfield, he said. Arthur was his lawyer, had been for 30 years. Tell him to come tomorrow night. After Diane goes to her book club. What book club? She meets her divorce attorney every Thursday night. She thinks I don't know. My blood went cold. She's planning to divorce you. She's planning to take everything before I die, or take everything after. Either way, she wins. He squeezed my hand. His grip was barely a whisper now. Unless I changed the game. Arthur came the next night. He was a tall, thin man with silver hair and reading glasses that sat on the tip of his nose. He had a leather satchel and a grim expression. I made them tea. Then I sat in the corner while my father dictated his wishes. The business, the properties, the accounts, everything goes to Diane, my father said. I nearly dropped my cup. Dad, you can't be serious. Let me finish, he said. His eyes were bright. Everything goes to Diane on one condition. She must retain Mia as co-manager of Gallagher Auto with full operational authority and a guaranteed salary for 5 years. She must maintain Cole's college fund. And she must not sell, liquidate, or transfer any business asset for a period of 3 years. Arthur was writing quickly. And if she violates these conditions, if she violates any one of them, if she fires Mia, drains the college fund, or tries to sell the company, the entire estate transfers immediately to Mia. All of it. Every shop, every account, every property. Diane gets nothing. Does Diane know about these conditions? Arthur asked. No, my father said, and she won't. Not until after the reading of the will. The main document says she inherits everything. The conditional addendum is sealed. It activates 72 hours after the primary reading. 72 hours, Arthur repeated. 3 days. That's how long she has to show who she really is. If she keeps Mia employed, keeps the business intact, keeps Cole's fund, she gets to be a wealthy widow. If she shows her true colors, he trailed off. She'll show them, I said quietly. I know, my father said. There was no bitterness in his voice, just sadness. But I'm giving her one last chance. That's more than she deserves. He looked at me. Mia, you need to promise me something. Anything. Don't tell her. No matter what she does in those 3 days, don't tell her about the addendum. Let her make her choice. If she surprises us, wonderful. She gets the money, and you get to keep working. And if she doesn't surprise us, then you get everything. And you take care of Cole. He's your brother. He didn't choose his mother. I started crying. I'll take care of him, Dad. I promise. I know you will. He closed his eyes. You're so much like your mother, Mia. She would be so proud of you. The next weeks were agony. My father was fading. His speech became slurred, then almost impossible. He communicated with blinks and squeezes. 1 squeeze for yes, 2 for no. I read to him every night. Old westerns, Louis L'Amour, Zane Grey, the books he loved. Diane never came downstairs. She was upstairs on the phone, making plans. I could hear her laughter through the ceiling while my father struggled to breathe below. Cole would come down sometimes. He was 7 now. He'd climb onto the bed carefully and lay his head on his father's chest. My father couldn't speak, but his eyes would fill with tears. He'd look at me and I'd see the plea in his gaze. Protect him. I would always squeeze his hand once. Yes, it happened on a Saturday morning. Early, around 5 a.m. The sun wasn't up yet. I was sleeping in the chair next to his bed, like I did every night. I woke up because the room was too quiet. The oxygen concentrator was still humming, but the rhythm was wrong. I sat up. I looked at his face. It was peaceful. The lines of pain were gone. He looked like the man I remembered from when I was a little girl. The man who carried me on his shoulders at the county fair. The man who taught me to change a tire in the driveway while Mom brought us lemonade. "Daddy," I whispered. I touched his cheek. It was still warm. I didn't scream. I sat there holding his hand for a long time. I told him I loved him. I told him I'd keep my promise. Then I called Arthur. Then I called the funeral home. Then I called Diane. She answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was thick with sleep. "What is it, Mia?" "He's gone," I said. There was a pause. Then, "Okay, I'll be down in a minute. I need to call the insurance company first." The insurance company. Her husband had just died, and her first thought was the payout. I hung up and pressed my forehead against my father's cold hand. The funeral was on Monday. Diane played the grieving widow beautifully. Black dress, black veil, black gloves. She sobbed at the graveside. She clutched Cole against her chest like a prop. The mechanics from the shops came in their cleanest shirts. Some of them cried harder than Diane ever could for real. Old Pete from Shop 1, who had worked for my father since the very first garage, put his hand on my shoulder and said, "He was the best man I ever knew, little Gallagher. Don't let anybody tell you different." Diane didn't speak to me at the reception. She was too busy accepting condolences and casserole dishes. She was already holding court in the living room like she was the queen of a very sad kingdom. The reading of the will was scheduled for Wednesday morning. Arthur's office. Diane showed up in a navy pantsuit. Her hair was freshly blown out. She looked like she was going to a board meeting, not a will reading. Cole was at school. I sat in the corner. I was wearing jeans and one of my father's old flannel shirts. It still smelled like him, engine oil and peppermint. Diane wrinkled her nose when she saw me. "You could have at least dressed appropriately," she muttered. Arthur cleared his throat. He read the will, the primary document, everything to Diane, the house, the business, the accounts, the investments, everything. Diane's face broke into a wide, satisfied smile. She actually smoothed down her pantsuit like she was settling into a throne. "Well," she said, "that's that. Thank you, Arthur. I'll have my attorney review the transfer documents." Arthur looked at me. I gave him the tiniest nod. Not yet. The clock started now. 72 hours. Diane turned to me in the parking lot. "I need to talk to you about the business," she said. "Okay. I'm going to sell it. I've already been in contact with a buyer. CarMax Plus. They're a national chain. They're offering $8.5 million for the whole operation." My stomach dropped. $8.5 million. Dad built that company for 30 years. It's worth 3 times that. "It's worth whatever someone will pay for it," Diane said. "And I want the cash, not the headache." "Dad wanted the shops to stay in the family," I said. Diane put on her sunglasses. "Your father wanted a lot of things, Mia. He wanted your mother to live. He wanted your mother to live. He wanted me to love him. He wanted you to be important. None of those things worked out." She clicked her key fob. The white Mercedes beeped. "You're fired, by the way. Effective immediately. I don't need you anymore. I have a buyer." "You can't fire me," I said. My voice was steady, even though my heart was pounding. "I just did. Clean out your desk by Friday, and don't take any company property." She paused, one foot in the car. "Oh, and I'm changing the locks at the house tonight. You'll need to find your own place. I'm turning your room into a yoga studio." She drove away. I stood in the parking lot and watched the white Mercedes disappear around the corner. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from the sheer audacity of it. My father had been dead for 5 days, and she was already erasing me. just like she'd erased my mother's photos, my mother's piano, my mother's garden. I called Arthur. She fired me, I said, and she's selling the company, and she's kicking me out of the house. Arthur was quiet for a moment. Then he said, all 3 conditions violated. In one conversation, that might be a record. How long do I have to wait? The addendum activates at 9 a.m. Saturday, 72 hours from the reading. That's 3 days from now. Yes. Can you manage? I looked at my phone. I had $340 in my checking account. I hadn't been paid since my father died because Diane had frozen the payroll as her first act as owner. I had my truck, a bag of clothes, and my mother's wedding ring on a chain around my neck. I'll manage, I said. Mia, Arthur said. Your father prepared for this. He set aside an emergency fund for you with me. I have $5,000 and an envelope with your name on it. Come pick it up. I almost laughed. Even from the grave, my father was taking care of me. I drove to Arthur's office and picked up the envelope. It had my name written on it in my father's handwriting. Shaky, unsteady, but unmistakable. Inside was the cash and a note. Mia, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. Stay strong. I love you more than she could ever spend. Dad. I cried in the car for 20 minutes. Then I drove to a motel on Route 9. The Bluebird Inn. $38 a night. The carpet was stained, the TV got 4 channels, and the ice machine rattled like a dying engine. But it had a lock on the door and a bed that was mine. I spent the next 3 days watching. I drove past the shops. I saw Diane walking through shop 1 with 2 men in suits, the buyers. She was pointing at the equipment like she was showing off furniture at a yard sale. Old Pete was standing by the lift, watching her with his arms crossed. He looked sick. I drove past the house. There was a dumpster in the driveway. Inside it, I could see the old living room furniture, the couch my father used to nap on, the bookshelf that held his westerns, a box that looked like it contained his trophies from the Chamber of Commerce. She was gutting the place. I called Cole's school to make sure he was okay. The secretary said Diane had enrolled him in an after-school program until 6 p.m. She was too busy selling my father's life to pick up her own son. Thursday passed. Friday passed. Friday night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the motel bed, listening to the trucks rumble past on the highway. I thought about my father. I thought about his hands, cracked and rough from years of honest work. I thought about Diane's hands, smooth, manicured, always reaching for something that wasn't hers. I set my alarm for 7:00 a.m. Saturday. At 8:45, I pulled into Arthur's parking lot. He was already there, standing by his car with his satchel. He looked nervous but determined. Is it done? I asked. I filed the addendum with the probate court at 9:00 a.m. on the dot, he said. It's official. Every asset of the Patrick Gallagher estate, the 14 shops, the real estate, the accounts, the house, it's all yours, Mia. I leaned against my truck. My knees felt weak. She violated all 3 conditions. In spectacular fashion, Arthur said. She fired you, initiated a sale of the business, and evicted you from the home. Your father's contingencies were very specific. She triggered all of them. Does she know? Not yet. I have a meeting scheduled with her at the house in 1 hour. She thinks we're finalizing the sale paperwork. I want to be there. I was hoping you'd say that. Arthur handed me a folder. These are the transfer documents. You are now the sole owner of Gallagher Auto, 14 locations, 212 employees. You're also the owner of the house at 44 Maple Ridge Drive, and you have access to the full estate account, approximately $4.2 million in liquid assets. I held the folder against my chest. It felt heavy, not because of the paper, because of what it represented. My father's entire life, his legacy, his trust in me. Let's go, I said. We drove to the house separately. When I pulled into the driveway, the dumpster was still there, overflowing with my father's things. The front door was open. I could hear music, some podcast about interior design. I walked through the front door. Arthur was right behind me. Diane was in the kitchen, leaning against the island, talking on the phone. No, I want the offer in writing by Monday, she was saying. Tell them 8.5 is firm. If they want the real estate too, it's 12. She looked up and saw me. Her face darkened. I'll call you back. She hung up. What are you doing here, Mia? I told you to leave. We need to talk, Arthur said, stepping forward. Diane rolled her eyes. Arthur, whatever she's told you, I'm the legal heir. It's in the will. You read it yourself. I read the primary will, Arthur said. But there is an addendum that you haven't seen. Diane's face didn't change, but her fingers tightened around her phone. An addendum. A conditional clause, Arthur explained. Your husband left you everything on 3 conditions: that you retain Mia as co-manager, that you maintain Cole's college fund, and that you don't sell any business assets for 3 years. Diane stared at him. Then she laughed. It was a sharp, brittle sound. That's ridiculous. He never mentioned any conditions. That was the point, I said. He wanted to see what you'd do when you thought no one was watching. Diane looked at me. For the first time, I saw fear flicker behind her eyes. And what happens if these so-called conditions aren't met? The estate transfers entirely to Mia, Arthur said, which, as of 9:01 a.m. this morning, it has. The kitchen went very quiet. I could hear the podcast still playing in the other room. Something about accent walls. You're lying, Diane whispered. This is a trick. You two cooked this up. Arthur opened his satchel and placed the documents on the kitchen island. These are the court filings. These are the transfer papers. And this, he placed a sealed envelope on top, is a letter from Patrick to you. Diane grabbed the envelope. Her hands were trembling. She tore it open and read. I watched her face change. The color drained away, then rushed back in hot red blotches. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She read it twice. Then she looked up at me with something I had never seen from Diane before, raw, unfiltered terror. He can't do this, she said. I'm his wife. I have rights. You had rights. Arthur corrected gently. You forfeited them when you violated the conditions. The addendum includes a no contest clause. If you challenge it in court, you lose even the modest monthly stipend Patrick set aside for you. A stipend? Diane's voice was rising. I'm not going to live on a stipend. I'm not going to live like some charity case while she pointed at me, sits in my house and runs my business. It's not your house, I said. I was surprised by how calm I felt. It never was. You moved in and redecorated. You threw away my mother's things. You threw away my father's things. I pointed at the dumpster through the window. That's his life in a trash bin, Diane. That's what you think of him. I was his wife for 12 years. And I was his daughter for 28. He trusted me. He didn't trust you. And you proved him right. Diane looked around the kitchen. The kitchen she had remodeled twice. The marble countertops she had picked out. The pendant lights she had ordered from Italy. None of it was hers anymore. Where am I supposed to go? She asked. Her voice cracked. You have your separate account, I said. The $200,000 you siphoned while he was dying, that should last a while if you're careful. And there's the stipend, enough for rent, groceries, Cole's needs. Cole, Diane said. Her hand went to her mouth. What about Cole? Cole stays with me, I said. Her hand went to her mouth. What about Cole? Diane's eyes went wide. You can't take my son. I'm not taking him. I'm keeping him safe. You can see him whenever you want. But this house is his home. His father built it. His father wanted him here. I stepped closer, and I promised Dad I would take care of him. That's a promise I intend to keep. Diane sank onto a kitchen stool. She looked like a woman watching her life collapse in real time. The podcast was still playing. Something about the psychology of color. It felt absurd. Diane, I said. She looked up. Dad didn't do this to punish you. He gave you a chance. All you had to do was let me keep working and leave the business alone for 3 years. That was it. You couldn't even manage 3 days. She didn't say anything. She just stared at the documents on the counter. You can stay here tonight, I said. Pack your things tomorrow. I'll make sure the stipend starts next week. She stood up slowly. She looked at me for a long time. I expected anger. I expected screaming. Instead, she said something that surprised me. He loved you more, she said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact. No, I said. He loved me differently. He loved me the way you love someone you trust. He loved you the way you love someone you're afraid of losing. There's a difference. She picked up her phone and her purse. She walked out of the kitchen. I heard her footsteps on the stairs. Then, silence. Arthur looked at me. That was remarkably composed, Mia. I learned from the best, I said, looking at the spot on the counter where my father used to sit and drink his morning coffee. He never raised his voice either. Arthur left. I was alone in the house. I walked through the rooms. The living room was almost unrecognizable, all white furniture and abstract art. But in the corner, behind a fake plant, I found a box Diane hadn't thrown away yet. Inside was my mother's sheet music. Chopin, Debussy, Beethoven. The pages were yellowed and soft. I held them to my chest and breathed in. They smelled like dust and lavender. I walked to the garage. The piano was still there, covered in a drop cloth and surrounded by storage boxes. I pulled the cloth off. The keys were dusty but intact. I sat down and played the only piece I remembered, a simplified version of Clair de Lune that my mother taught me when I was 9. My fingers stumbled. I hit wrong notes. But the melody was there, filling the garage with something that had been missing from this house for 12 years. Monday morning, I drove to Shop 1. I pulled into the parking lot at 7 a.m. The mechanics were already there, standing around looking worried. Rumors had been flying. They knew about Diane's plan to sell. They thought they were all about to lose their jobs. I got out of my truck. I was wearing jeans, boots, and one of the company polo shirts with Gallagher Auto stitched on the chest. Old Pete saw me first. He elbowed the guy next to him. "Morning, everyone," I said. 20-something faces turned to me. "I know you've heard a lot of rumors this week. I'm here to set the record straight." I took a breath. My father left this company to me. Not to Diane, not to a buyer, to me, and I'm not selling. Pete started clapping. Then Jimmy from Shop 7. Then the rest of them. It wasn't a standing ovation. It was a rumble of relief that built into something that sounded almost like joy. "Nothing changes," I said. "Same shops, same team, same standards. If anything, we're going back to the way Dad ran things. Quality first, people first, and donuts on Fridays." Pete laughed. "She's a Gallagher, all right." That first month was brutal. I worked 18-hour days. I learned every aspect of the operation that I hadn't already known. I sat in the shops. I rode with the tow trucks. I reviewed every contract, every invoice, every employee file. I canceled the sale to CarMax Plus. Their lawyers were not pleased. I didn't care. I also moved the piano back into the living room. I hired a tuner. I started playing every evening after Cole went to bed. I wasn't good, but the house needed music again. Diane moved into an apartment across town. She was quiet for the first few weeks. Then the lawyers called. She was contesting the will. Arthur wasn't worried. "The no contest clause is ironclad," he said. "If she pushes this, she loses the stipend." She dropped the case 2 weeks later. Cole was confused at first. He missed his mother. I drove him to see her every weekend. But gradually he adjusted. He started doing his homework at the kitchen table while I worked on the books, just like I used to do with my father. One night, he looked up from his math worksheet and said, "Mia, can you teach me to change a tire?" I almost cried. "Yeah, buddy, this weekend." 6 months later, I was going through my father's old desk, the one in the study that was now Cole's playroom. In the bottom drawer, under a stack of old invoices, I found a letter. It was addressed to me, dated 2 weeks before he died. "Mia, I don't have much time left, so I'll keep this short. I made a lot of mistakes. I should have protected your mother's memory better. I should have seen Diane for what she was sooner. I should have fought harder for you when you were a kid and she was pushing you out. I was weak. I was lonely. I was afraid, but you were never weak. You were always the strongest person in any room, even when you were 14 and didn't know it. The business is yours now, not because you're my daughter, but because you're the only person who understands that Gallagher Auto isn't about cars. It's about the people who fix them and the people who depend on them. Take care of Pete. Take care of Jimmy. Take care of Cole. And take care of yourself. Your mother's ring. Keep wearing it. It suits you better than it ever suited her, and she'd want you to have it. I love you, kid. More than every engine I ever fixed. Dad. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. I wore it there for weeks, like a talisman. Eventually, I framed it and hung it in my office at Shop 1, next to his photo and a small sign that read, "Donuts on Friday." A year after my father's death, Diane came to the shop. She didn't call ahead. She just showed up, standing awkwardly in the waiting area, looking at the motivational posters on the wall. "Pete came to get me. Diane is here." I walked out. She looked different, thinner, less put together. She was wearing flat shoes and no makeup. She looked human for the first time since I'd known her. "Can we talk?" she asked. We sat in my office. She looked at the framed letter on the wall. She looked at the photo of my father. She looked at her hands. "I got a job," she said, "at a dental office, receptionist. It's not much, but it's something." "That's good, Diane." "I'm not here to ask for money," she said quickly. "I just wanted to say." She stopped. She pressed her lips together hard, the way people do when they're trying not to cry. "I wanted to say that you're a better person than I am. And Cole is lucky to have you." I didn't know what to say. So I said the only thing that felt true. "Cole is lucky to have both of us. He needs his mother." She looked at me startled. "You want me in his life. You're his mom, Diane. I'm not trying to replace you. I'm trying to keep him safe and loved. That's what Dad wanted." She nodded. A single tear ran down her cheek. She wiped it quickly, the way my father used to. "Thank you, Mia," she whispered. She left. She didn't become a saint overnight. She didn't transform into a loving stepmother. But she started showing up. She came to Cole's school plays. She helped him with his science projects. She stopped talking about money and started talking about her son. It wasn't a movie ending, it was a real one. Messy, incomplete, but moving in the right direction. I drove to the cemetery after work that evening. I knelt by my parents' graves. My mother's headstone had a small engraving of a piano. My father's had a wrench. I placed a bunch of lavender on Mom's grave. I'd started growing it again in the backyard. On Dad's, I placed one of the shop's business cards with my name printed under his. Mia Gallagher, owner and CEO. "You were right, Daddy," I said. She showed her true colors. But you know what? I think she might be finding new ones. I traced the letters of his name with my fingertip. "The shops are good. Pete says hi. Cole can change a tire now," and I moved the piano back inside. I sat there for a while. The Tennessee sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink behind the old oak trees. A mockingbird was singing somewhere. It sounded like one of Mom's scales. Up and down, practicing until it got it right. That's my story. I'm telling you this because somewhere out there, someone is watching who feels invisible in their own family. Maybe you have a step-parent who treats you like an inconvenience. Maybe you have a parent who chose a new partner over you. Maybe you're the one holding everything together while someone else takes the credit. I know how that feels. I know what it's like to watch someone erase the people you love from a house you grew up in. I know what it's like to be told you're the past when you're standing right there in the present. But here's what I learned. The people who try to erase you are afraid of you. They're afraid because you represent something they don't have. Loyalty, integrity, heart. My stepmother tried to throw me away because she knew deep down that I was the real thing and she was the imitation. Your value doesn't come from who claims you. It comes from who you are. It comes from the promises you keep, the people you protect, the work you do when no one is watching. And if someone in your life is waiting for you to disappear so they can cash in on what's yours, don't disappear. Stay. Work. Be patient. Because the truth always surfaces. It might take 72 hours. It might take 72 months. But it comes. I want to hear from you. Have you ever been pushed aside by a family member? Have you ever had someone try to steal what was rightfully yours? Your home, your inheritance, your place at the table? Tell me your story. Drop it in the comments. Let's talk about it. If this story hit home for you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find this channel. And if you want to hear more stories about justice, about karma, about people who got knocked down and came back stronger, subscribe. I'm Mia. I'm the stepdaughter she tried to throw away, and I ended up owning everything. Thank you for listening. Take care of each other. And remember, the people who love you never really leave. They just find new ways to protect you. See you in the next one.